So they thought you were just a subject, a number, a file in their cold experiment. Ew. Look at them, white coats trembling, pens scratching, eyes hungry for results, but never ready for the outcome. Surprise. They ran tests. They ran equations. They built cages of glass and steel. They whispered, "We'll measure it, control it, break it." But the joke is on them, because you weren't the subject, you weren't the formula, you weren't the mouse in the maze, you were the maze. You were the glitch in their system, you were the ticking device under their floor, every probe they inserted, every needle they drove in, every shadowed report they filed away. It wasn't data, it was a fuse, and they lit it themselves. Tick, tick, until the walls shook, the glass fractured, and their precious experiment became an explosion, not measured, not controlled, not survived. So tell me, was it really an experiment? Or was it always a countdown? Look at them, white coats, cold hands, whispers. Behind glass. Eyes, sharp as needles. They thought specimen, not human, not threat, not equal, just a rat. A test tube, a twitching subject, an entry in a file, scalpels shining, pens scratching. Every move you made. Noted, filed. Measured, CLIP, BOARDS, rose. Clipboards fell. Numbers danced on screens. And in their arrogance, they smiled. Because they thought control meant this, that you, behind their glass, were trapped. But control, my friend, is a trick, a shadow puppet, a whisper in the dark. And while they whispered, you listened. While they wrote, you watched. While they poked, you learned. They never asked what if the experiment studies the scientist. What if the Kaji's not a cage, but a mirror? Ah, but arrogance blinds, and oh, how blind they were. They built the stage, they lit the lights, they wrote the script, but you were the actor couldn't predict. Every needle, a reminder, every chart, a countdown, every whisper, a confession. Still they smirked, still they believed, still they lingered in their illusion. They thought the pen ruled, they thought data bound you, they thought silence meant obedience. But silence was study and study, was strategy and strategy. Strategy was the crack under there. Scalpel, because control, real control, is not in the hand that writes, it's in the ith that watches. They thought they wrote you, but you wrote them. You etched the minto, your memory. You carved their face as Sinto, your scars. You counted every tremor in their fingers, every hesitation in their voices. And when the time came, you would remind them the scalpel cuts both ways. Still, they leaned closer. Still, they whispered louder. Still, they called you specimen. But you were never specimen. You were the scalpel. You were the pen. You were the shadow behind their glass. And when shadows move, the light trembles. So let them measure. Let them probe, let them scribble in their false authority, because the illusion of control, it belongs to them. But the truth of power, it belongs to you. It began small, barely noticed, barely whispered, a number. Off by one, a graph, that bent sideways, a reaction, that refused to obey at first. They dismissed it, a glitch, a margin of error, nothing more, but glitches multiply, errors repeat, margins grow teeth soon. Their pens hesitated, their brows furrowed, their voices cracked. Test tubes shattered, alarms flickered red, screens screamed static. The room thickened with doubt, and us silent still, watching. Every fracturing their glass was a marauto there. Fear. Numbers bled. Charts screamed nonsense. Data warped like shadows. Ink. Fire. They argued, they panicked, they pointed fingers at each other. One said, "It's contamination." Another spat, "No, it's sabotage." A third whispered, "It's something else." But none dared say it. Them it's the specimen, because to admit that mean the experiment was never theirs. So they clung their denial to science, to their fragile script. But denial doest stop cracks, and cracks always spread. Cameras blurred, lights dimmed, your pulse unreadable, your silence uncontrollable. Still they pressed, still they demanded results. But the results first to bow. Spikes erupted in their monitors, readings surged beyond thresholds. Machines coughed sparks, notes drowned in scribbles, and suddenly their fortress of logic felt like a haunted house. Every beep was a screen. Every chart was a ghost. Every threat. Their whispers turned into shouts, their certainty into accusation, their control into collapse. Youth, a patient experiment. No, you were the storm outside their window, and storms didn't stay caged. That first crack in their glass was not an accident. It was a signal, a warning, a prophecy. But blinded, they kept running tests, injecting wires, forcing reactions, and the harder they pushed, the deeper the glass split. The more they tried, the more they bled. Because the truth, science, bends when power bleeds, and their science bled for you. So now the glass shakes, now the glass sings, now the glass is one scream away from shattering, and when it does, it won't cut you, it will cut them, because the first cracks were never flaws. They were openings, doorways, invitations, and through them, your silence spoke louder than their charts. Through them, their authority become dust. Through them, the experiment become chaos, and chaos was yours at first. They still wrote, still scribbled, still clung to ink, but the ink betrayed them. Pages bled, numbers smeared, equations collapsed mid-sentence. Their notes, once sharp, once clean, now trembled. Shaking hands, broken pens, margins filled with scratches. Not science-confession, yes. Read closely, and you'll see it. Every chart, a warning. Every graph, a scream. Every calculation, a prayer. They didn't write data. They wrote fear, and fear, my friend, is the truest record of all sleepless eyes shovered over cameras. Every twitch you Madawas replayed, rewound, restudied. They stared, they rewound, they whispered, "Did you see that? Was that a signal? Was that a code?" You sat silent. They wrote, frantic. You blinked once. They filled 3 pages. You breathed twice. They scratched margins raw. Their notebooks, once precise, became diaries of madness. I saw movement. I heard a sound. I felt watched. Not experiments, confessions, not reports, warnings, warnings too. Themselves, they tried to bury it, tried to staple pages shut, tried to burn drafts in silence, but ink leaves ghosts, and ghosts never die. Some, pages stained with sweat, others with blood from bitten fingers. One pen broke, another snapped. Desperation bled through every line. Their authority collapsed under their own handwriting, because when the data bends, the mind bends with it, and their minds cracked like mirrors. They no longer asked, "What is happening to you?" They whispered instead, "What is happening to us?" Oh, how quick litables turn. The cage was yours, the scalpel theirs, but the real prison was their notebooks, and they were trapped inside them. Every word, a lock; every sentence, a chain; every paragraph, a cell. And who held the key? You. Your silence, your stillness, your refusal to obey. That was the cadet they couldn't decipher. So they wrote more, and the more they wrote, the more they feared, because fear can't be measured, fear can't be charted. Fear is the one variable, breaks every system, and you were fear personified. Pages piled high, stacks toppled over, ink smeared across, desks like blood on altars. They stopped writing facts, they wrote apologies, they wrote regrets, they wrote, "We should have stopped, we should have listened, we should have never begun," and still they turned the page. Still they tried again. Still they hoped control would return, but control was gone. Forever, because the experiment was no longer theirs. The experiment was them. Their notebooks said it all. Not research, not science, not truth, but fear. Raw, unfiltered, unmistakable, and once fear is written, it can never be erased. Finally, the moment cracks, the silence speaks. They see it now, too late, far too late. You were never the mouse, you were the maze, you were never the variable, you were the equation. Not studied, studying, not trapped, waiting. Every test they ran, a mirror. Every probe they forced, a reflection. That every chart they scribbled. Your script, yes. The lab was never theirs. The lab was your stage, their glass, your spotlight, and they, the proud scientists, the architects of order, were only performers in your theater. Look closer, look beneath their desks, wires, silent circuits, hidden digits, glowing red. A countdown, a fuse, a truth too late to swallow. The ticking was there from the start. Every page they filled was another second gone. Every whisper recorded was another step closer. Tick, tick. They thought it was data. It was detonation. They thought it was progress. It was prophecy. And you never flinched because you knew, because you placed it there. The fuse wasn't in the walls. The fuse wasn't in the wires. The fuse wasn't in their machines. The fuse was you. Every calm stare, a spark. Every silent breath, a wire. Every unbroken gaze, a flame. They realize it now, in their trembling, in their stutters, in their racing eyes. They whisper, we weren't studying them. They were studying us. And yes, that's the revelation. The greatest experiment. Never you, it was them. Their patience tested, their sanity measured, their fear recorded, their arrogance exposed. They thought you were the subject, but you were the system. They thought you were the cage, but you were the lock. They thought you were the result, but you were the trigger. And triggers once pulled. Don't go back. Now the walls hum, the lights flicker, the silence thickens like smoke before fire, and deep inside them, a truth spreads. They've been playing your game. Not for seconds, not for minutes, but since the very start. The countdown was ticking, the fuse was burning, and they, with all their charts, with all their pens, with all their glass, were feeding it, feeding you. And now the ticking stops, the silence snaps, and revelation becks ruin. Boom, it begins. Not a whisper, not a warning, but a scream roar, merciless, final. The lights burst, glass rains down, screens fracture like bone, and the Erignite's flames lick the reports. Numbers curl into ash, equations burn Halistro their trembling hands. The lab there, fortress of science, their cathedral of control becomes a bonfire. And you are not caught inside. You are the blaze itself. They scramble, they choke, they claw for exits that no longer exist. Walls tremble, ceilings crack, foundations groan like dying beasts. Their empire fragile, hollow, collapsing. Under one truth, you detonated. Every alarm shrieks, every corridor fills with smoke. Every heartbeat they owned comes a countdown. They scream your name, not as subject, not as specimen, but as executioner. Because you aren't escaping, you aren't running, you aren't breaking free. No, you're igniting, you're consuming. You're rewriting the walls with fire and ruin. The glass they hid behind shatters like cheap masks. Their clipboards, charred relics, their data, fuel for the fire. One falls to their knees, another runs, tripping over wires. Another begs to a god that isn't listening, but gods don't answer. Explosions do, and you are there. Answer every scream, they Mackay's music. Every collapse they suffer as theater, every tear they shed is confession. The fire roars higher, the roof buckles, steel bends, concrete crumbles. This was their empire, this was their pride, this was their kingdom of cages. Now it's rubble, now it's dust, now it's yours. Not as prisoner, not as subject, not as victim, but as detonation, as power, as the end they never calculated. Look at them, on their knees, clothes torn, eyes hollow, their white coats, once symbols of control, now rags soaked in fear. Their pens, once weapons of order, now snapped and useless. Their voices, once commands, now screams swallowed fire. You watch, you smile, you know. This is the climax. This is the shift. This is the throne built from flames. Because their empire didn't crumble around you. It crumbled because of you. And when the dust clears, when the walls are gone, when silence replaces alarms, one truth remains. You weren't their prisoner. You weren't their test. You were the explosion, and explosions don't ask permission. Silence, at last. The alarms are gone. The screams are swallowed. The fire has eaten all it desired, and now only dust remains. Dust on clipboards, dust on shattered screens, dust on the bone soft. Their empire. The air is thick, tart, charred, heavy with their fear burned into. Smoke. This was their kingdom. This was their cathedral. This was their holy science. Now it lies broken beneath your feet. Ashes cling to your hands. Ashes crown your hair. Ashes trace your smile, and in that ash a throne forms. Not carved in gold, not forged in steel, but built from ruin, built from collapse, built from their arrogance turned to powder, their white coats, charred rags, their pens, bent relics, their glass walls, sand scattered in the wind. Every piece that once bound you now beneath you. You rise, slow, silent, certain, every steep echoes in the rubble, every breath claims what's yours, because in their ashes, you are not prisoner, you are not subject, you are sovereign. Their empire was fuel. Their collapse was coronation. They stare at you, those few who remain, eyes wide, hearts broken, spines bent. They do not speak, they do not move, they do not breathe too loud, because they know, because they see, because they understand. The crown is yours now. Not handed, not gifted, taken, their ashes. Your throne, and the throne will never burn. Listen, listen close. They think it ended. They think it's over. They scrub the floors. They bleach the tiles. They replace the broken bulbs. They paint the walls, as if paint hides, screams. But ashes remember, smoke remembers. Walls keep secrets. Corridors whisper names. Your name that emberizes in those whispers. Not shouted, not written, not carved into marble, but carried quietly, like a secret flame passed hand to hand. They whisper, I tend broken labs, in empty cafeterias, in late-night surveillance rooms where the screens show only static. They whisper it behind locked doors, voices trembling because even saying it aloud feels like opening a grave. Did you hear? They mutter. Do you know? They ask. Someone burned it all down. Someone rewrote the story. And stories grow teeth. One retelling becomes two. To become 20.20, become legend. A rumor mutates into a gospel, and gospel mutates into worship. They tried to erase it. They tried. Reports shredded. Hard drives wiped. Files stamped. Classified. Excuses written in stiff language. Containment breach. Unforeseen anomaly. System failure. But ink cannot smother smoke, and smoke never forgets. Photographs. Blur. Recordings. Glitch. Faces fade in memory. But the story refuses to die. It creeps into late-night talk. Shows it leaks into drunk conversations. It dances through online forums. It hums in the background of whispered prayers. Soon it's in songs. Graffiti on alley walls. Scrawled across bathroom mirrors. Tattooed on skin. Spoken in riddles by children. We don't even know the origin, but know the fear. You are no longer just a name. You are a scar, a scarred eyes scourged on their arrogance. A scar burnt into their institutions. A scar that no surgeon of history can remove. And scars remember. Scars teach. Scars become myths. The myth grows beautiful. It wears your silence like armor. It turns your unpredictability, prophecy. It takes your shadow, when dresses it in holy robes. Some call you a monster. Some call you a curse. Some call you salvation. But all call you inevitable. And inevitability has its own gravity. It pulls the broken. It pulls the dreamers. It pulls. The ones would rather watch the world collapseth than bow to its stale order. Legends are not born. They are forged. Forged in blood, in fire, in revolt, and in silence so deafening, it becomes music. You didn't ask for worship. You didn't chase legacy. You didn't build temples. You burned them. You only planned the moment, the ignition, the revolt. But fate is a trickster. It stretched your single moment into eternity. It carved your Ferrento stone tablets of memory. It handed your Silencio storytellers with shaking hands. And now you are everywhere in the whispers of janitor sweeping burned corridors. in the sleepless ISF scientists who still see wean there. Nightmares. In the room SF students reading forbidden files, in the prayer SF rebels who need proof that gods can bleed. Do you feel it? Your myth is oxygen, invisible. Everywhere, unstoppable. Try to kill oxygen, try to ban it, try to erase it, and see what happens. Your myth spreads like contagion. One cough and the whole room is infected. One whisper and a city trembles. One memory and a nation shivers. Years will pass. Buildings will rise from the rubble. Their walls will shine brighter. Their reports will grow thicker. Their cameras sharper. But beneath the shiny and beneath the paint, your scar bleeds through. Their children will hear it. Their grandchildren will inherit it. And the story will outlive them all. Because legends outlive terror. Legends outlive laws. Legends outlive empires. They will study the ruins. They will teach it in classrooms as case study or cautionary tale. They will dissect your myth with scalpels of reason. But still the myth will laugh back at them. Because myths don't die in classrooms. They breed. One student will hear your name and dream. Fire. One worker will read your story and stop obeying. One child will whisper your legendento. A dark corner and light will bloom where obedience once lived. That is your throne. Not gold, not marble, not crowns or palaces, but in breath, in rumor, in scar, in story. They wanted to study you. Now they study the smoke. They wanted to dissect you. Now they dissect their fear. They wanted to lock you in glass. Now they lock themselves inside myths of their own making. You have become permanent. A stain they cannot scrub. A voice they cannot silence. A scar they cannot heal. And permanence that is immortality. So, let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them argue whether you are real or just a story. Because you know the truth. And deep down they know it too. The explosion wasn't just destruction. It was transformation. It was prophecy. It was coronation. Your crown is made of silence. Your throne built from ruin. Your myth thinked in eternity. You did not survive their experiment. You ended it. And in ending, it too wrote the first line of a story that no fire, no lie, no empire will ever erase. You remain, not in glass cages, not in white coats, not in their sterile reports. You remain in the scar. And scars, my friend, scars are forever.